right, interesting. So you'll probably gain something lah from this session today when I share about hyperstructures.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, excited. Yep.
I believe you also the 1,000
Yeah,
Twitter
I'm the
Twitter
1,000
follower as
follower
well.
in
It's
Twitter
like,
as well.
whoa, it's got
Oh
1,000
man,
Twitter
Did
followers.
you get a prize or something?
and I
Hey,
got a picture. Got a post and
We should make him
picture.
into an NFT. Yeah,
made like a
Oh
big
man,
announcement.
okay,
the
that
next
would
the
be
next cohort of KopiDAO NFT.
1,000. Okay. Oh, by the way, guys, I'll be leaving at 10 because I have a meeting later. Yeah, so but maybe not that sharp. Yeah, so yeah, so if I suddenly offline, yeah, just want to let you guys know first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no worries.
Yeah, no
Okay.
problem. Today's session will hopefully be a short one as well, unless we have a lot of discussions going on where I certainly hope for that lah. So yeah, no problem. You can hop off anytime.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
I guess with that, let's also get it started lah.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
let's see who is that outside.
oh, it's Matthew.
Okay, Matthew
Matthew.
is here. Jerome is still out there. Okay lah. Hi Matthew, how's the meeting catch up in Jakarta?
Yeah, man, it was good. It was good. It's my first interaction with someone from the DAO in real life. So yeah, man, we quite enjoyed it. It was just the two of us, but yeah, it was nice.
That's nice.
Mhm.
Okay, so I think without further ado, let's start this sharing session. So today's session we will just like held it in a very casual way, right? More in a discussion session because what we are going to share on this session today is about hyperstructures. It's a very interesting new concept, right? So I mean, any discussions, any differing opinions or perspectives are welcome to be voiced out, so then we can learn together, right? Okay, so before we start, let me just briefly introduce myself for the benefit of everyone here. Right, so I'm currently a student developer at 42 Kuala Lumpur. It's actually a coding school under Sunway Education Group. Okay, I am also in the past two times hackathon prize winner using blockchain technology as a proof of concept. So for one of the project is called Carbon Reviews, which is actually a sort of a decentralized rating system for carbon footprints of a product, that is available out there in the market. And another project is called Green Hero, which it actually incentivizes a user's environmental journey, right, with real world rewards via NFTs. So in this space, I'm also a learner. I've also touched into a lot of different aspects, including play to earn games. I've worked with some NFT companies. I've invested in some DeFi protocols. I've joined a DAO, right, KopiDAO, and I'm also pretty active in some local community events, right, regarding this Web3 space. So in this space, I'm actually very passionate in growing my network and learning the trades in this space, so that I can build public goods that will change how humans interact with the environment through blockchain. Okay, so that's a short introduction of myself. So I just want to bring back, right, to this topic that a few of us had during last Thursday's meetup. So for your info, right, a few of us from KopiDAO actually met up in Penang last week, right, last Thursday. So at this session at night, Daniel, Yudish, and I were having a conversation. So we asked each other, right, what is a Web3 app? What is a Web3 application that defines itself as a Web3 application? So today's hyperstructure is an attempt to answer that question, right? What is a Web3 app? Okay. So many people, are actually inspired by the promise of a future world that blockchain brings. And true enough, actually, many people that I've met in this space they want to change the world, right? However, we can't be expecting a different outcome if we keep repeat on doing the same things, right? That's insanity. Building in Web3 requires a whole new mental model. We need to look at different angles and perspectives if we want to make sense of what makes sense to build in Web3. So let's briefly go back to the Web 1 and Web 2 era and look at, oh, wait, I actually forgot to share my screen. So I'll do that now. Okay. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's.
Goodness, what a miss
Sorry.
outside. Finally found my way in. Was touring the entire place, stuck
Right.
in the garden.
Yeah. So we have started already, Jerome. Come, let's get seated. Okay. So let's briefly go back to the Web 1 and Web. Sorry, Jerome. Are you like, can you turn off your mic?
Yep, yep.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So just, oh my God, what is this? Yeah, Jerome, sorry. Can you turn off your mic? Thank you. Okay. Sorry again. So yeah, let's have a look back at the Web 1 and Web 2 era and look at what are some of the hints that we can learn from, right? So Web 1 was primarily made up of a small number of people generating content for a larger audience, right? It was read only, but the people were not able to react to it, right? Then comes the Web 2 era, which enables many people creating even more content for a growing audience. So it was focused on participating and contributing. So right now, we have come to a point that there is too much siloed content on the internet and new apps and companies popping up every day to solve this exact same problem, right? So then where does this bring us? Blockchain like Ethereum and file storage like the IPFS serves as the global database as well as execution and settlement layer, right? So in a way, we now will have consolidated content on the internet, and the best part, it will now be maintained by the general public instead of a single entity. So on today's session on hyperstructures, I will attempt to introduce this interesting new idea and concept to see how we can apply this concept to build the future of Web3. First, disclaimer, I did not come up with this term hyperstructures, okay? So I first came across this concept is by Jacob, okay, Jacob from the Zora protocol. If you guys don't know what is a Zora protocol, it's actually an NFT marketplace, right? A decentralized NFT marketplace, which can be categorized as a hyperstructure, right? So I came across this concept while scrolling through Twitter, and then I resonated with this idea a lot because I had this concept running around in my head when I first learned about uh, this blockchain, right? You know, because I want to create a public good that will change how humans interact with the environment. So the work by Jacob merely helped me reaffirm my ideas, lah, right? So through further research, I realized that there are actually similarities with what Paulo Soleri has envisioned, right? So who is Paulo Soleri? Paulo Soleri is actually Italian American architect, right? He focuses on archaeology, which is a combination of architecture and ecology, right? Which uh, which is to build self-sufficient hyperstructures. Okay, maybe towards the end, I'll show you a bit of what are the real world hyperstructure that is being experimented in the real world, right? And it is actually inspired by Paulo Soleri. Okay.
Terribly sorry to interject. Are you? Oh, you're not changing the slides yet, right?
Yeah, I'm not changing the
Okay, okay,
slide
okay.
yet.
Yeah, I just
Okay,
wanted to.
thanks. So throughout this session, please treat this session more as a discussion session. I will pause somewhere halfway, to ask for any questions, and then we can discuss on different perspectives of it. So for today, we will also have Victor to journal the whole entire workshop today, and then so that we can put it up as a content on our social media. All right. So let's dive into it. Okay, so in here I'll tell you what hyperstructures really are, and then why are they important, plus the key characteristics that make them a hyperstructure, and where to from here, right? Okay, so the definition of hyperstructures are crypto protocols that run for free forever without maintenance, interruption, or intermediaries. Okay. So, what makes them so important, right? These are the key characteristics. So, we can notice that it actually shares a few similarities to the qualities of a public blockchain, right? For example, unstoppable, permissionless, and credibly neutral. Okay, I think let's dive into the first key characteristic, which is unstoppable. So, in this slide, you guys can see that there are power grids and railroads, and then we can also imagine highways, right? So traditional infrastructure like this, like power grids and social media platforms, they actually require a trusted intermediary to maintain and operate. Without this trusted intermediary to maintain and operate it, right, the infrastructure will actually degrade and or stop operating altogether, because this trusted intermediary, they require profits, labor, and subsidy to serve their purpose over time. Okay, so hyperstructures can run on a blockchain forever without ability to stop them. Hyperstructures can continuously function without a maintainer or operator. So this is actually a superpower that we have no good prior example of. Think of it, right? It is pretty amazing. So hyperstructures only require one-time creation cost, right? Which is usually the gas cost for deploying this type of hyperstructures. And once deployed, it will run exactly as designed without degradation. No further labor or capital will be required to sustain this hyperstructure. Okay. It is also interesting to note that if the core team or platform built on top of the hyperstructure were to disappear from the face of the earth overnight, right? These hyperstructures will still run exactly as designed and be fully operational for decades. Okay. So here is some example that we can look at. So it's very interesting to note that there is a distinction um, for hyperstructure. So not all blockchain-based protocols are actually hyperstructures. So we can see above the dotted line here. Okay, for companies like Coinbase and OpenSea, they actually have their order books maintained offline in their own centralized servers. So, for example, if one day their servers go offline, the whole market actually goes down with them. And it will be the same as any platform that built on OpenSea. We can see that if there's one day OpenSea actually goes down, right? A lot of the shop fronts, NFT shop fronts that is built on OpenSea, they will also go down, right? So, but this is not the case with Uniswap and Zora. So they are fully on chain, and there's nothing that can be done to actually halt uh, these protocols. That means, yeah, they will run forever as exactly as designed. Okay. So the next characteristic for a hyperstructure is they can be simultaneously free forever to utilize and also extremely valuable to own. as there is no cost to maintain to keep the protocol operational forever, right? However, that uh, however, at any point of time when an individual is interacting with the hyperstructure, they still have to pay the blockchain-wide gas fees, right? Okay, so for the next characteristic of a hyperstructure, hyperstructures usually they will have expensive fees. What do we mean by expensive fees? So these expensive fees are actually built-in incentives that can be utilized by anyone, right? Me and you, for example, uh, to add value in a codified manner on top of the protocol. Okay, and it will be transparent and available to the entire ecosystem. So how does it actually work, right? Let me give you an example. Okay, so here I have two examples, right? From one is from Uniswap and another is from the Zora Marketplace protocol. Okay, from example one, we can see that uh, the expensive fee is Uniswap liquidity provider fee. So LP fees are actually used to incentivize participants to provide the key resource um, to a protocol like Uniswap, right? Which is liquidity. So what is liquidity? Liquidity is if the more liquidity that trading protocol have, the lesser the slippage fee that a user will get, right? So this kind of LP fees, it is not paid to Uniswap. It is paid to the LP providers to expand the utility of Uniswap. Sorry. They, and Uniswap do not have a monopoly on providing that utility, and an LP only captures value on what they are creating. So they provide liquidity to Uniswap, okay, and in return, they will get back the incentives for doing that, right? So they only capture the value on what they are creating. That's simple. Sorry. So for example two, we can actually look at Zora's finder's fee. So what is a Zora finder's fee? This fee is to incentivize participants to provide the key resource of um, of an NFT, of selling an NFT, right, on the marketplace, because we can see that right now there is so many NFTs out in the market, but it is very hard for an NFT to find its rightful buyer, right? So this Zora finder's fee is actually paid to participants to help them in the distribution of the NFTs, right? It is paid to anyone who finds the winning bidder or eventual buyer of an NFT. So the Zora finders, they actually expand the utility of Zora, and Zora do not have a monopoly on the NFT markets being displayed, and the finder only captures the value they are creating. Simple, right? So any participant's value captured is actually synonymous with their value generated. If any third party or entity has the ability to freely extract value, but without direct value creation, then the system would not be called a hyperstructure. All right. So up till now, do we have any questions that we want to discuss or anything?
This is Matt. So a question, just trying to reconcile number one and well, just trying to reconcile number one basically. So like the idea of it being unstoppable and not needing human like intervention to, I guess, continue running. Like, how do I think about that in the context of the need for like miners or validators to like validate transactions on the chain? And then secondly, like in some of these cases, the Uniswap example, like, I mean, liquidity doesn't just add value. Like liquidity providers, they don't just add value. Like the exchange doesn't really work without them, right? So like that degree of human intervention is not just value added, it's in fact necessary for the exchange to function in the first place, right? So I'm just trying to reconcile that against the idea of it being unstoppable and not needing human intervention. So how should I think about that?
I see. So your first question is about unstoppable. Can you rephrase your question on the part for unstoppable, please?
So under unstoppable, I think you said that uh, unlike traditional web where it requires a trusted intermediary, that this can kind of keep going without an operator or a maintainer, right? And what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying is that like in the Uniswap example, like you do need these LPs or else it just like doesn't work, right? You can't have an exchange without liquidity, right? And so in that way, is it really unstoppable? Because like without these people, like yeah, the mechanics theoretically work, but it doesn't actually function, right? So that would be one example of where it seems like human intervention is in fact necessary to achieve the desired outcome.
Right. That's true. That's true. So I think how the way to to explain this concept is how to say hyperstructures will be formed naturally. So imagine in a market where many protocols like Uniswaps, they will they will exist, right? And they'll come and go, so it will eventually be consolidated into one hyperstructure that will emerge. For maybe for today we have Uniswap. So eventually, um, these hyperstructures, they will gain a lot of traction from humans to actually build on it and actually use it to actually create and extract value from it. So so how to say that, if there's no one that is using the protocol, then that means they wouldn't get a fee lah, right? So if as long as there's demand, the fees will be there to incentivize these LP providers. Does it make sense?
Yeah, mechanically it makes sense, but so okay, so maybe if I'm understanding you correctly, the right way to think about this is like it's self perpetuating, right? Like meaning like meaning the way the mechanics of the system are such that like people are incentivized to provide the services needed in order for the machine to function, right? So it's a
Mm.
positive feedback mechanism. And
Yes.
so in that way, by virtue of the positive feedback mechanism, it's like a perpetual motion machine, right? Like you don't need to keep adding energy to the machine because the machine is perpetual motion once it's like sort of set rolling down the hill. Is that the right way to think about it?
Yes, because I mean, in actual fact, if no one is going to be using protocols like Uniswap for trading, then an LP fee wouldn't actually make sense, and therefore it wouldn't exist in the first place. So yeah, I think what you said just now is about self-perpetuating. I think, yeah, that's the right way to think about this.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Right. So yeah, does anyone want to add on to that? Okay, if there's none, I'll continue with the remaining points. Right. But good take, Matthew. Thanks for that. Okay. So for the next characteristic of a of a hyperstructure is hyperstructures are actually permissionless. They are universally accessible, and everyone is able to utilize it completely without prejudice. Right. There is no one that will be able to change its core operating functionality, and everyone can actually confidently build their own platforms, applications, and economic models on top of the hyperstructure without the risk of deplatforming. So there is actually censorship resistance at the individual level, as there is no central entity that can decide to restrict access to the utility of the infrastructure. So in a way, hyperstructures are also credibly neutral. Why? Because it it will be codes that are written on smart contracts and deployed onto the blockchain. So smart contracts and codes are actually run by machines and computers and not by humans who usually would have some sort of bias, right? So hyperstructures are user agnostic and they do not discriminate for or against any specific people and able to treat everyone fairly in a world where everyone's capabilities and needs are so different, right? So this brings hyperstructure, to create like a sort of positive sum environment, right, where every one of us can just live happily, just like this cute little hedgehog over here. So by being free forever, there is no incentive for someone to one for one replicate the same functionality, right? So what this means here is that since it is already free to own, right, free to operate in perpetuity, so it doesn't really make sense for anyone else to just fork the protocol and run it by themselves, right? So yeah, because there will be no additional value capture or risk minimization that comes from doing so. Plus, the network effect that is already being built on the hyperstructure uh, will further make it I mean, will further make it invalid to to fork the protocol. Right. So for the last characteristic of a hyperstructure is that although it is free, but it is still valuable, right? So how do we say that hyperstructure is valuable, right? It's not. It's usually yeah. Let me explain here. So how hyperstructures are valuable is also um, how we are actually seeing, it's actually a familiar value model that we already observe for NFTs. The media on the NFTs can be universally free to consume, just like the board apes, right? We can right click save, we can show it to our friends, but it is also available to own and control as an individual or group. So for hyperstructures like Uniswap, actually, currently, Uniswap and Zora, they actually have a fee switch, right? So they can actually, it's governed by a DAO. The fee switch is governed by a DAO, and they can actually turn this fee switch on across the protocol by the DAO members, right? To just extract some rent from the users. But doing this long term, it will be value destructive to turn it on, because it would actually immediately lead to an incentivized fork of the protocol that will that will actually do a fee switch that is much lower, and then later on there will be another person that will just fork the protocol and turn on a fee switch that is much lower. So eventually it will be, consolidated into a hyperstructure that will be free for everyone to use, right? So that's the concept. So yeah, with hyperstructures, we can actually create a for public protocol which will be recognized for the value they provide to the society at large, which far exceeds any amount of profits that can be extracted in the immediate term. Yep. Okay. So do we have any other up to now, do we have any other takes or questions? Okay. If there's none, I'll just continue with the remaining ones. So sorry. Sorry. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit ill. I'm still recovering, but my voice is like slowly losing. So I hope that I can continue on until the end of this session. Sorry about that.
It's all good, man. Music to my ears.
Okay. So Jacob, right? The person that actually shared this idea from Zora Protocol, he actually made a few ways of how we can build a hyperstructure, right? So these are the few points over here. So hyperstructures are made to power millions of interfaces, not just one. So when we are building a hyperstructure, we need to have in mind to make the hyperstructure as generic as possible, right? So building hyperstructures, we need to use fees as a way to expand the ecosystem. Is my mic on? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so building hyperstructures, we should use fees as a way to expand the ecosystem, but not extract from it, right? So always aim for long term instead of short term when we are building a hyperstructure. Always take a protocol first building approach, right? More on focusing on developer adoption so they can create many integrations, which will then create more network effect to cement hyperstructure as the default structure that will power the world, right? So the next one would be to build liquidity, right? This is actually also akin to the network effect because when there's enough liquidity and network effect, it will be beneficial for new entrants to join the ecosystem and thus will reduce the ability or incentive to fork the protocol. So only have ownership where possible and governance where only necessary because usually too much of either and you will find that the hyperstructure will get skewed incentive and it will be at the risk of attacks. So building hyperstructure also have a long build cycle, right? So if we look at in this way, building a hyperstructure is much more akin to creating hardware than software, right? We are actually creating something that's similar to a hardware because it has a long design periods and usually it will have high friction migrations and there's always a high bar for deployment because once we deploy something and then we can't really change how it's going to work anymore, right? So yeah, so thus the long build cycle. So yeah, hyperstructures are actually built to be built on. So I did mention about Paulo Soleri and his vision for archaeology, which is combining architecture and ecology. So this is actually a hyperstructure, right? This is called the Arco Santi. It is actually a hemisphere building, right, facing the south. So during hot summer time, it provides shade from this part, and then during winter time, it will attract the most sunlight from this part. And not this is not only the function, right? So within this Arco Santi, it's actually there are many activities, workshops, performances, and people are also actually living in this hyperstructure, right? This is just for reference. Okay, so why does this matter? Why do we need to build hyperstructures, right? So I mean, this opportunity to build hyperstructure is brought to us by the introduction of blockchain technology. We can actually create civilizational infrastructure that can outlast our lifetimes because it is unstoppable and it will run as designed forever for free without any intermediary or interventions. So we are at a once in a generation moment where we are lucky enough to have the privilege to build the first one, right? So for every financial utility, we'll likely see a singular hyperstructure emerge, right? So for example, it can be exchanges, marketplaces, lending pools, options, and so on. While for non-financial utilities, it can be domain names, registries, identity, curation, tags, reputation, emojis, read receipts, and so on. Right. Yeah, so this concludes my sharing on hyperstructures. Yeah, I'll be opening the floor for any, questions or discussion. So while we're at it, if you have attended this session, I think you can claim a POAP, which I have designed myself for this session. So hope you like it. So
I
yeah,
guess. Sorry, I mean, if there's no other questions, I guess if it's all right, I'll just pull on the string a little bit more that I was kind of asking about before. Is like, so like we define the hyperstructure in the example of Uniswap, but I mean, there could be many examples, right? Like as a system where the incentives are such that like people will naturally keep the machine going, right? The perpetual motion machine example, right? And I'm wondering, does that necessarily have to be if we define a hyperstructure in that way? Does in fact a hyperstructure have to be Web3, or does it even have to be online at all, right? And what I mean is like exchanges, just very similar to the ones that we described in Uniswap, at least in terms of the mechanics, those exist elsewhere, right, in the world, right? Like, I mean, exchanges for different assets have existed for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? And so those also had incentives for people to transact with each other, right? The profit incentive that we talked about before. So are those also hyperstructures using that same example, or am I missing something fundamental there?
could you like maybe give some examples of the hyperstructures that you mentioned just now? Then see,
Sure.
maybe there are some ways that we can discuss on it further.
Sure. So I mean, like, we talked about Uniswap and providing liquidity and how there's like people trade in Uniswap, that there's fees there, and like that provides incentive for people to provide liquidity, right? Which therefore makes the exchange work, right? But like that mechanic, that like at a very fundamental level, that's like kind of how a lot of marketplaces or exchanges work, right? Even in the offline world. So like, if I'm trading all kinds of like financial instruments, right? There are people who like provide liquidity and they make fees, right? Like if, for example, if I'm a market maker on a stock exchange, I make money off of the bid ask spread, which is just another way of expressing fees, right? And so I'm incentivized to like provide that liquidity vis-a-vis the fee that I'm gathering, aka the bid ask spread, right? And
Right.
so using that same sort of definition of people being incentivized to participate, it seems like we might be able to in fact call that would be applicable in that context as well, even though it's offline.
Yes. I think it's also important to note that they what hyperstructures really are. First, they will be unstoppable. That means they wouldn't require any maintenance or intermediary to keep them operated for a long period of time, right? And then the second point is to look at permissionless, where it doesn't discriminate, and it can be owned by the public in general, right? So I think not sure if the exchanges or marketplaces that you mentioned about, which are hyperstructures, actually do they meet these qualities as well? Because I think hyperstructures need to be viewed as a whole. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're right. I think that maybe that's the point I was missing, is that like in order for it to be a hyperstructure, it needs to tick all of these boxes, right? Not just one or some of them, right? And so just because it passes like that particular test, the unstoppable test, it needs to pass all the other tests in order to qualify, right?
Mm,
And so maybe that's the difference. So that makes sense.
yeah. But also, yeah, it's interesting point lah. But also something to think note of is that what I'm sharing right here, it may not be the definition, right? It might just be like another checklist. There might be more coming down the line as we see more how hyperstructures will take place, because this is actually still a very novel concept in this Web3 or blockchain world. And I have, while doing my research, I have only found a few useful resources regarding hyperstructures, and it was picked up by, I think, the Gitcoin founder, right? Yeah, which actually shared that this is particularly interesting topic or concept. But I think why I'm sharing this today is because I do think that hyperstructures are something that will define uh, Web3, right? How Web3 will be, which is to consolidate a lot of the siloed content that we have out there right now in the Web2 world. Yep.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Absolutely. I was just asking out of curiosity. So thank you very much.
Cool.
Hi, T.Y., can I ask a question?
Yep.
I'm sorry if it's a question, but I'm just wondering, would any blockchain, like Ethereum, for example, would that be considered a hyperstructure? Because it seems like what you're explaining to me, at least, is that it's basically your base infrastructure, which you build on top of, right? And there are elements of decentralization and Web3 that come in that make it permissionless and all. So just off the top of my head, I know you mentioned Zora and Uniswap. Would Ethereum, the blockchain, be a hyperstructure?
Mm, I okay. I think for currently, for my understanding right now, I don't think blockchain is a hyperstructure yet. I mean, um, Ethereum or the blockchain has still yet to prove themselves lah. But if blockchain is here to stay and Ethereum is here to stay, so then hyperstructures will be running for as long as the blockchain exists. Um, I, if I can understand it that way. Yeah.
But if like Uniswap, for example, is built on
Mhm.
the Ethereum blockchain, right?
Mhm.
So isn't that the base infrastructure of the hyperstructure? If you get where I'm coming from,
Sorry, the base infrastructure of the hyperstructure.
which is am I right to say that Uniswap is built on Ethereum,
Hmm.
right? And you say it runs forever, right? But wouldn't that base infrastructure of it be the Ethereum blockchain?
Yes, you're correct. So I mean, yeah, so it will run forever as long as the blockchain runs. So if Ethereum continues to run indefinitely, um, so then it will be the same for hyperstructure. So if, let's say, um, blockchain or the Ethereum wouldn't be running, anymore for any kind of reason, um, then it wouldn't. I mean, then hyperstructures will cease to exist, I guess. Yeah, so that's just my take lah, from my understanding of things.
Yeah, I think I want to add on to what Ashwin said, right? I think Ashwin kind of took some of the words out of it. Is I'm also trying to understand this hyperstructure. So if anything that is built on the blockchain is supposed to be permissionless, is forever in a way, in your words, right? And this is I don't need an answer for this, right? This just to point out, right? Because it goes back to even like Michael Saylor's argument that the fact that Ethereum itself should be a commodity because and Bitcoin should not be because Bitcoin technically does not have a foundation that back it, so there's no control, right? Whereas the Ethereum blockchain, as decentralized as it's supposed to be, it's still governed by a foundation, right? So they are not technically uh, as decentralized as Bitcoin, lah, in a way, right? So how do you define this hyperstructure in that context, right? Shouldn't it be looking at the what Ashwin mentioned is the base layer of the technology, which is the blockchain itself, right? So the blockchain itself, like let's say Bitcoin, is because like no one technically dictates what it's supposed to do, Whereas Ethereum, you have a bunch of developers that come together and they're driving this thing, right? So it's technically um, governed in a way. So they have a lot of sway, lah. Just like how any DAO, you can say that, yeah, sure, it's decentralized, this and that. The token holders, if you don't curate your token holders, and the VCs are in here in your DAO, it's an illusion, right? In a way that the VCs still control your entity, right? So yeah, I mean, just my thought process.
Mm.
No need for an answer, right? But I don't understand how I know that it's a new concept, but how can something be forever if claiming this Zora protocol in this context, right? If Ethereum were to cease operating, then there's no protocol, right? So how can you be a marketplace of protocols?
Yes. Yeah. That's a good take. So to be honest, why I actually mentioned that, I still don't know because there i- there is still a certain uncertainties regarding this kind of public blockchains, and um, how long will they actually exist, right? So yeah, I mean, myself and maybe I don't know if others have the have the answer ready for it yet, but I still have my own uncertainties of, will blockchain, will Ethereum continue to exist, right? Maybe a public blockchain like Ethereum or an Ethereum rival will eventually arise, that has this sort of similar, how to say, properties, right? Then I guess the definition for hyperstructures still can exist. Yeah.
So will the answer then be multi-chain then?
That's a pretty big topic for me to answer. Yeah.
Because if, let's say, Uniswap, right? Obviously Uniswap won't cease to exist. Let's say, unlikely lah, but let's say Ethereum gets fucked over, and they still want to. There's no more validators anymore. For example, no one wants to
Mm,
maintain Ethereum anymore, right? And they decide that, okay, that's fine. We have all these other chains. We are gonna acknowledge that the existing liquidity that exists on Ethereum can be ported over to this chain, whatever chain I'm building on. Then technically it could last forever, right? Because for us, I think we are looking at, definitely the future is going to be multi-chain. How do these blockchains essentially work together? I think there's one good example from Avalanche, not Avalanche, from Algo Rand, that they are doing. Shit, I can't remember what it is. I'll look it up, right, and I'll kind of drop that thing into general chat for us to ponder about, right? But yeah, I mean, nothing else to really add on for a sake, because like, we won't be able to really see this until it's proven, right?
yes,
In
correct.
the
So
many years to come, yeah.
correct. Yep. Yep. Interesting take lah. From from both Ashwin and Jason. Yep. It's some interesting take that we can ponder upon and maybe come together and share more among ourselves. You know, during some gathering session later on.
Yeah, for sure.
So so before we end, then if you enjoyed this session, would you mind just checking out my own tipping site? I'll be sending in this chat in Gather Town. Right, it's called Buy TY a Coffee. Yeah. So if you like enjoy this session, you want to buy me a coffee, feel free to do so. I've actually fixed some bugs that Jason actually found. So hopefully it's working. If it's not working, please do let me know. Yeah, you can write your own name, or you want to remain anonymous. You'll also be able to do so. You can leave me a message there, and the message will be actually logged onto the blockchain, right? So it will be stored there forever, right? Unstoppable and tamper proof. I can change your message, like, yeah.
I love
So
it.
yeah.
We'll be sure not to say anything too embarrassing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what do you think of this session? Should we do more of this, where we discuss on topics and ideas of Web3? These are a lot of high level concepts and ideas. Or should we do more on sharing on the technical part of building on Web3, more like developer stuff? Yeah, would like to hear on any feedbacks.
I thought this was really good, bro. It's really interesting and thought provoking as well. Definitely, I
Mm,
think we'll continue to do more of this. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I Go ahead.
I was gonna say I agree completely. I think like the structure of
I
the thought
think
of like the
it's
presentation was like
very
very.
refreshing. But we, I mean, let's hope that there's some continuity in this. I'm not sure how KopiDAO is going to capitalize or probably try things out. Since we are among the first few bunch to know about this new concept, perhaps we can embark on something when the time is right. Okay. But personally, I like what DY has shared. And of course, let's hope that there are more use cases and more references where we can actually piggyback on. Yeah. Thanks,
cool.
DY.
Yeah, I think we can pass it back to Matt. Matt was midway.
That's all right. No, I was just giving compliments. I thought it was like very clear, well laid out. I think like there's a lot of interesting, I think, applicability of the concepts, right?
Mhm.
And so yeah, I don't know. Personally, I found it very useful. So thank you very much for doing that.
Cool. Yeah. So aside from this, I could also share on, if anyone wants to know how to build on the blockchain with low code or no code, right? I think primarily using third web actually for now. So you can also just voice out, and I can probably do something with it. Yep.
I think you should. That one we should definitely sit down and craft it out. So, I mean, since all of us are DAO members here, the idea of this 1 hour workshops moving forward is supposed to be public, right? It's for us
Mm,
to not just for the DAO members, obviously, it's for everyone else to join us and just to chat, right? Just talk about Web3 and all that. It doesn't necessarily always need to be like workshop, that kind of thing. It could be fun, and I think this is like you mentioned, like high level, so it's very philosophical in a way, right? Like maybe you can dress for the occasion as well. I don't know, but I don't know, but yeah, I mean it's very fun. Ty, thanks for
cool.
doing things like this, and
Mm,
yeah, but
o-
for the current workshops that we have right now, primarily it's still the fundamentals for Web3 and no code. Those are
mm,
the ones that we are bringing into the schools, right? But for online, especially a gather town setting like this, it can be quite literally anything, right? So
mm, sure.
yeah, find more interesting new concepts that people are trying to coin it,
Mm,
hyperstructures or whatever, right? Whatever. I even in the past I tried to coin this thing called a chat app, right? That didn't
ooh,
work out. But yeah, I mean it's always funny to see, or interesting. I'll put it this way, interesting to see thought leaders trying to coin a concept and see where they take it to, right?
right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I think it's already 10:30. I think we should wrap it up here. So have everyone already claimed your POAP already? Yeah, let me know if you still haven't and you still want to claim it. I can just reshare the screen and let you claim it.
Could you do that, please? I tried to claim it and it said that the link I need to rescan, and then
Okay. Yeah, let me do so.
thank you.
Let me just refresh.
This is awesome, MTY. Very excited for you. You even came out with your own Po app. Now you have like your Buy Me a Coffee app. This is awesome, man.
Yeah, if any DAO members, you know, you want to do something similar, like if you want to create a POAP, it's actually pretty easy. You just have to go on to poap.xyz, right? You just have to create a drop, and then the curation body will. It actually took me 1 hour to create my own POAP drop, right? So it's actually fairly simple, and a lot of instructions can be found there. And I think for the Create a Coffee app, right now, I think primarily is still, um, I think for me to play around and see if it works. If it really works, then I can also help DAO members to set it up. I can
So
teach you how to set it up as well.
so we can talk more about that too, right? Because
Mm,
remember, I think I mentioned to you our member pages,
yep.
right? That's something that we want to do as well. Obviously, our DAO members, we want to let them have, you know, when you fill out that form, right? We ask you, do you want a customized member profile or whatever that is that features
Mm,
you? Remember that question that we ask people that when they
yep.
apply
Yep.
for the DAO? We are looking to build out a member page like that and allow our members to have the same, basically like a buy me a coffee thing. It will be basically a member card for everyone. And whatever you do, when you share this profile, your KopiDAO profile, people like what you're doing, people went through a session and all that, they can just mint that NFT
Yes.
and
Yes. Yeah. I
you'll
think
receive a
that should how I mean that should be how it needs to be done lah. I mean, it's all based on Web3, right? We should do something that is more Web3 based and stuff
yeah.
like that. Yep.
No, no, it's a product that the product team wants to build out. So
Mm,
let's chat about it because eventually we want to open up the member pages, kind of like a link tree for external people as well. So DAO members they get the full tip,
mm,
but other people using kind of like the profile pages that we built, the DAO takes like a maybe like a 10% for facilitating this for them. So
mm.
it's like it's income for the DAO, you know. So you're on the right track.
Yep. Sure. Happy to work on
Yeah.
it.
Awesome, man. Very happy. Yeah.
Okay. I think
Thanks
I'm
for the
losing
session.
my voice already. Let's wrap
Yeah.
it up. Okay. Have a good night, everyone. See you soon.
Good night.
Thanks.
Take care,
All right.
TY.
Bye.
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 Bye.